do you think was the motivation behind the Israeli destruction of the Iranian consulate in Damascus, if not to start a war and bring the U.S. in?
I think it was exactly that. It's being portrayed in Israel and in the Western press as this was a mistake, another mistake of intelligence. I don't think so. Netanyahu, for the last 25 years, has been seeking ways to bring the United States into a military confrontation with Iran, if not just to destroy its nuclear program, which, as I've said before, is impossible because it's buried deep under a mountain and you can't destroy it. Ehud Barak, the previous prime minister, made this point very clear 2 years ago in a Time magazine article when he said, look, it's not available to military action. So, look, Iran is a threshold state now, a nuclear threshold state. Israel, get used to it.
But Iran, is it not true that notwithstanding the threats and propaganda of Prime Minister Netanyahu, Iran does not have nuclear weapons capable of delivery to an adversary?
Absolutely. And that has been attested every year since 2007 by the intelligence services of the United States, collectively and clearly, with complete confidence and complete, confidence in the sources that there is no nuclear program. In other words, Iran is a nuclear threshold state, but not a nuclear weapon state. Important distinction.
What do they do with their nuclear material? Do they use it to produce energy, domestic energy?
Yeah, that was the long-term plan from the outset, was to have a nuclear program that would power their industrial sector and then sell the oil and gas for income, for investment and for the development of the economy. So rather than just using up the oil and gas that they had, they would have a nuclear program for their industry and then sell the oil and gas. That was the plan and still is the plan. And they use a lot of the highly enriched uranium for things like medical research. Iran is a leader in medical research, and they use this sort of isotopes for they have a research reactor which is entirely devoted to medical purposes, where they are leaders.
Israel has often portrayed itself as a country that it wants everyone to fear. Is that still the state of Israel's self-perception, or did the Iranian response, widely downplayed in the West, but apparently successful from the Iranian standpoint, the Iranian response to the destruction against Israel, to the Israeli destruction of the Iranian consulate in Damascus, did it burst that bubble that everybody should fear the Israelis?
Yes, but it went even further than that. It was something much more profound that took place in their response. It did burst their deterrence projection around the world, and the Israelis are aware of it. But you have to, let me just explain a little bit of the background so your audience can understand it. If you go back even to the end of the last century, Persia under the Shah was the major power in the region. And the Sunni Arab states, the Gulf states, were sort of small Bedouin statelets, emirates and monarchies of very little significance. Everything Iran dealt with the Persia was the power. Then we had this whole period of attrition of Iran. What hurt them and bruised them most was what they called the imposed war. That was the Iran-Iraq war. That was so damaging. I think there were commentators in the West who said it was ideal because we've got, is Muslim fighting Muslim in the Middle East, and that's just how we like it. But it left Iran bruised, and they said effectively Never again will we be so vulnerable. Never again. And then we had in 2006, and I mentioned it in this paper, in 2006, there was an attempt to change the whole paradigm of the state, and that Sunni Islam, led by Saudi Arabia, would become the prime power in the region over Iran. And Iran would be sanctioned, attrited, undercut by the United States and by Islamist forces, which the Sunni powers would use, if you like, to confront Iran. And the Iranians bided their time over those years with what they call strategic patience. And during that time, they evolved a new deterrence system, a new deterrence philosophy. And this is what you saw the other day on, I think, the 13th, on the 1st of April, when Iran said, we're ready now. In other words, this program, this military program, this program of a new type of war was ready, and they were confident in it, and they moved from a strategic patience to active deterrence. We are ready now, they were saying. And they have the missiles, they have the weapons, and they have the doctrine. And they worked on that doctrine. And this is what you saw in that missile attack on Israel. It's just one part of it. The other part is the careful, prepared work that was done with other Shia movements, with other resistance movements throughout the region. Not only Shia, Hamas is a Sunni movement, but with all of these movements to prepare them and to tell them the fundamentals of the new type of war, using cheap drones, cheap cruise missiles, using them, but with smart, latest technology to make them precision weapons. And because of the dominance in the airfield that the West has, not air power, the ability to crush anything, everything was buried. Everything was buried 70 meters down, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Lebanon, whether it's Iran, whether it is the Houthis, all have followed this pattern. And then it's a slow attrition that is taking place against Israel on the various fronts. And so this was this new military doctrine, this new military war that had been facilitated by suddenly the availability of cheap electronics, cheap components for building drones and cruise missiles, but also it had a strategist behind it. The strategist who understood you have to arrange this in a good, effective matrix so that this worked. And he also had the doctrine of controlling, if you like, the intensity of wars and also the escalatory ladder, so that you didn't go up too quickly. You didn't go to full war straight ahead. And so what we saw in the so-called Iran attack on Israel was not an assault at all. It was a message. And it says, we're ready now. And we can get through, even using our older type of missiles. We can get through your defenses, and we can strike at your most sensitive air bases, even those that are 30 kilometers from Dimona, which is the Israeli nuclear center and where very possibly their nuclear weapons are kept. So it was very straight. So in other words, just to finish, so in other words, the whole paradigm that we saw in 2006, where, if you like, the Gulf states and the friends of Israel had, if you like, primacy in the region, has been turned on its head. And now, after a long period, really the power resides with Iran completely. They have a power, and perhaps a greater power than Israel fully understands or is able to cope with. So we are back to the late 19th century power structure. It is a complete strategic overturning of the old order, where the Sunni world was ranged in support of Israel and the United States against Iran. And now Iran has, if you like, its time has come. We are now ready, and it is ready to show that it is quite happy to counteract any attacks on it from Israel or from the United States, and that it has the means to do so, and it has the strategy to support it.